Love, as most people preach it, is not the sunrise of ultimate truth. It is the twilight of your autonomy, the slow dismantling of a journey you should be walking alone. It feels like revelation, but under the surface it is regression, a willing slide into the warm hallucination of someone else's approving stare. Hegel reminds us in Phenomenology of Spirit that identity is kinetic, hammered out through struggle, self against world, liberty against resistance, the known against the terrifying unknown. Yet the man who tumbles head first into infatuation dodges that crucible. He interrupts his own evolution, fastening himself to a woman not because she exposes his essence, but because she spares him the anguish of facing what he is not. When Hegel speaks of the struggle for recognition, he is not tracking likes or applause. He is diagnosing the existential demand of every consciousness to have its freedom acknowledged by another freedom. Recognition, he says, is the first spark of self-awareness, but only when it flows both ways, freely and from strength, not from pleading hands. Attach your sense of self to someone who cannot or will not affirm your inner liberty, and you don't transform into a man, you shrink into a servant. What looks like devotion under a romantic filter is, in his eyes, evidence of your weakness, proof that you have not yet formed a core solid enough to greet the world on its own terms. Love without self-knowledge is dependency dressed in soft colors. It is a man outsourcing the labor of becoming to someone who was never hired for the job. No partner, girlfriend, wife, or passing crush can hand you recognition if you haven't built anything inside worth seeing. So long as you refuse the mirror of contradiction, you offer nothing but hunger and longing. Hegel's master-slave dialectic slices through the heart of relationships built on uneven footing. One life drawing breath from another's lungs. Wonder why heartbreak feels like bodily collapse? Because you inhaled your meaning through her presence, and the moment she withdrew the air, your paper-thin identity crumpled. You are not shattered because love died. You are shattered because you never planted your feet on stable ground. Feel remorse, yes, but not because you loved, because you renamed avoidance as commitment and crowned your partner therapist, mother, mirror, and deity. Every time you flee your own freedom, you dodge the primary responsibility of existence. A man is not born whole, he becomes through solitude, friction, reflection, and the scaffolding that failure provides. The man who loves too hard doesn't require more affection. He requires a brutal summit meeting with his fear, the cowardly fragment of him that wants the entire enterprise of becoming subcontracted to someone softer. That fear is sacred tension. The creative friction Hegel deems essential. Smother it with infatuation, and you amputate your one chance at substance. Keep falling this way, recklessly, desperately, unshaped, and you don't merely flirt with heartache, you flirt with postponing the arrival of your authentic self indefinitely. Cruelly, the more you believe you are giving, the more you are in fact taking, pilfering confirmation, siphoning worth. You cloak dependency in the costume of romance because you are not aiming to love, you are aiming to be certified, to have her body and attention pronounce you sufficient, real, irreplaceable. This is not love, it is spiritual theft, carried out by a man too asleep to know he's the burglar. You've cast yourself as victim now that she's gone, yet you were the architect of your own hollow kingdom, constructing your very soul out of borrowed bricks. What aches is not her absence, it's the vacuum where your self should have stood. A consciousness dependent on external validation can never stand upright. It staggers, forever scanning faces for proof of existence. Such dependence births servitude, not chains and whips, but the invisible cuffs of neediness, performance, and chronic dread. Every silence becomes a threat, every boundary a laceration, because each reminds you that without her gaze, you disappear. Hegel's blade is merciless. Recognition begged for from weakness will never arrive in clear form. The self that pleads has already abandoned itself. You equate falling in love with depth, yet love rooted in dependency is only proof you are still asleep, dreaming that someone else can complete homework assigned solely to you. Hegel names the remedy the labor of the negative, the harsh work of sitting in contradiction long enough for something truer to crystallize. It demands you interrogate the desperation, the longing, not as ailments a woman should cure, but as messages to decipher, energies to refine. Freedom begins the moment you smash the mirror, cease demanding she be your salvation, and shoulder the unfinished architecture of your spirit. Danger stalks the man who trades the grind of selfhood for the anesthesia of being wanted. That comfort always evaporates, and with it, any identity built on its steam. When it goes, you are not merely sad, you feel erased because your I never stood alone. Love is fine, but let it spring from a man already anchored, not a boy siphoning value through adoration. A soul erected on another's gaze isn't in love, it is in hiding. Hegel romanticizes nothing about this path. He calls it violent, a negation of negation, where falsity burns so truth can emerge. Many men decline the invitation. They prefer ease and cling to the first warm embrace that promises relief. But unity gained this way is counterfeit. It is not synthesis but submission, and submission prohibits growth. Eventually, reality erupts. And what collapses is not just the romance, but the fantasy that you had ever evolved at all. Now you sit amid ruins, confused, bitter, and, if you're honest, ashamed, because deep down you know you abdicated the throne of your own becoming. You muffled doubts, disfigured values, and shrank your voice to remain inside her approving spotlight. When its warmth flickered out, you felt the cold, not simply because she left, but because you'd exited yourself first. Hegel calls for unflinching self-interrogation. Spirit grows stronger through rupture, not lullabies. So ask, when was the last time you challenged your private myths about love, validation, or the man you claim to be? If the answer is never, you have lived expecting rescue, an indulgence reserved for children, not conscious adults. Sober truth. She was never hired to complete you. That assignment always bore your name. When you made her custodian of your wholeness, you failed her and yourself. Hegel preaches becoming, not arriving. No rest exists in borrowed affirmation. Forge yourself in solitude, reflection, and creation. Then, and only then, can love stand as genuine meeting rather than emotional annexation. Most never reach that summit. They freeze at the first reflection, confusing a partner's approval with identity. But to be free, recognition must meet you as a subject, never an object. And that requires inner strength. Operate like a boy chasing affection as oxygen, and you condemn yourself to perpetual flattening. The moment your partner tires of reflecting your fragile image, the illusion shatters and you confront how much of life was costume. What stings is not her departure, but exposure, the revelation that confidence was contrived and love was camouflage for escape. Hegel offers no sedation, only confrontation, the contradiction between craving visibility and lacking a self worthy of display. Self, he insists, must die to illusion before it resurrects as something real. Most men retreat, seeking fresh arms to numb the ache. Each flight postpones the alchemy that negation promises. You cannot become without rupture, and you cannot love without becoming. Strength grows where eyes remain open in pain, and where fantasy of rescue finally burns. Suffering alone does not equal depth. Pain without transformation is just rehearsal for another collapse. Recognition, mistaken for rescue, poisons intimacy. turning devotion into anesthesia until you disappear inside her to dodge the man you refuse to create. Spirit is actual only as process, conflict, disillusion, reconstruction. Stare at the shards after heartbreak and ask, what was authentic, what was desperation, and what was performative hunger for reflection? Most men resume the chase, each new infatuation muting the void until the cycle repeats. Endure contradiction without fleeing, and something within reconfigures. You stop begging to be witnessed and begin to witness yourself. Clarity at first feels violent. It executes the fabricated man, but it also introduces the one meant to rise. Freedom is not invulnerability. It is wholeness that no gaze authenticates and no rejection cancels. Sublation, Hegel's word, is destruction that preserves. You salvage fragments, longing, desire to connect, then rebuild them around truth, not need. Holding yourself means carrying your own suffering, standing in storms and declaring, I remain, and I require no audience to exist. Indifference postures as strength, yet real strength is the capacity to feel deeply while ungoverned by completion fantasies. Dependency makes you a shadow. The haunting presence is not the woman gone, but the self never born. The emptiness her exit left is not a wound, it is raw potential for selfhood. When illusion disintegrates, the authentic journey begins. No mirrors, no begging, only the long road and your own unaccompanied stride. There is a quiet power in realizing no cavalry is coming. Selfhood must be won, not gifted. Love built on dependency will inevitably collapse. That collapse returns you to your one indispensable resource, yourself. So stop calling escape love an ego-death heartbreak. She didn't steal from you. She revealed how empty your vault was. Each time you fall too hard, you display how much interior labor you've evaded. Women are not repair shops. They are equals to meet. Choose. Remain addicted to falling and rename fear as destiny, or commence the work not to regain her, but to construct you. The world will not salute you until you have saluted yourself. Recognition follows self-recognition, never precedes it. Silence helps you hear the voice buried beneath performance. There the dialectic awakens. Without contemplation, you remain reaction, not consciousness. You cling, you don't love. Build values, habits, and craft a body of work so that love, when it arrives, is an offering, not a hostage negotiation. When you've earned yourself through solitude and thought, you no longer fall, you walk, you choose, you meet love eye to eye. You've seen through the mirage of completion and accepted contradiction as the engine of growth. Join this project of depth over comfort, truth over flattery, philosophy over distraction, and support the work if it fuels your ascent. This is not entertainment, it is a summons.